Hi there, and welcome back to the box office at the Ritz Theater here in the heart of the city of Newburgh. We are on night 3 of this 5-night virtual gala extravaganza for the Safe Harbors of the Hudson. My name is Bridget Hayes, and I am on the board of the Safe Harbors, and I am so excited to be able to announce tonight's performers. It is a literary performance that you're not going to want to miss. We have Danielle Trussoni, who is actually currently a resident of the city of Newburgh. She is a multi-award winning, international best-selling author with several books out. And then we have poet Ruth Danon, who is a multi-published author and has spent 23 years at NYU teaching creative and expository writing to students, and in her retirement still is teaching and offering private lessons and giving performance here in the Hudson Valley. We are so excited to have these two greats, and I really hope you enjoy. So sit back, relax, let the words rush over you, and at the end, I really hope you will consider giving a little something to help keep Safe Harbors of the Hudson doing what they do here in the heart of the city of Newburgh, revitalizing the community, transforming lives, and just really giving so much to the people that live here, the people that work here, and the entire Hudson Valley. So join me in appreciating tonight's performance and Safe Harbors of the Hudson. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Danielle Trussoni, and I am going to be reading from my new book, The Ancestor, which came out this year in 2020. I'm the author of 5 books, and I would love to be able to tell you about all of them, but this one is basically, the premise is that a young woman takes a DNA test and discovers that she has a completely different family than the one that she understood she had. And the novel moves between New York State and Turin, Italy, and the Alps. So I'm going to read you 2 short sections, one from the very beginning of the book, and then another from her trip to Italy when she goes to meet her new family. To discover you are the heir to a noble title in the 21st century is like winning a fortune in the lottery, the Mega Millions or a Powerball jackpot, only to find your prize will be paid out in francs or lira. Suddenly, you are rich, but rich in a currency that has no value in the modern world. Or so it seemed to me upon learning that I was the last living descendant of the ancient house of Montebianco, a family whose power from the Middle Ages to the unification of Italy in the 19th century was immense, whose sons, because only sons mattered in those unenlightened times, had fought religious wars and married minor princesses and sired noble children, but whose fortunes and fertility had diminished as the modern world rose, leaving me, Bert Monty, a 28-year-old American woman with few social graces and zero knowledge of European history, the sole blood heir to an ancestral domain in the mountains of northern Italy. It all began early one Saturday morning, just before Christmas. I was living alone, although Luca's things were still at the house. He'd been taking clothes to his new apartment slowly, week by week, a pair of jeans here, a t-shirt there, in an effort to keep our lives intertwined. His plan was working. We saw each other often, and even had gone out for dinner and a movie the month before. Well, we'd been separated for 6 months, and it had been my idea for him to move out. I found it comforting to have my husband around. We'd been together for nearly 10 years, and despite the problems, which were mostly my problems, as we both would agree, it was hard to imagine life without him. My parents were both gone, and I had no brothers or sisters, aunts or uncles or cousins. Luca was the only family I had. Until, that is, the letter arrived from Italy. A knock came at the door, and I left off decorating the Christmas tree, a 3-foot fir festooned with tinsel and blinking lights, to answer. It was a cold, sunny December morning, the sky so bright that the envelope glinted like a mirror in my hand. I signed my name on an electronic pad, wished the delivery man happy holidays, and was back inside before I saw that the envelope was addressed not to me, Bert Monty, but someone named Alberta Isabel Eleanor Victoria Montebianco. I sat down at the kitchen table, pushing aside tinsel and glass bulbs so that I could get a better look. The return address was from Torino, Italia. A parade of bright Italian stamps floated at the top right corner of the glossy envelope. The words Alberta Isabel Eleanor Victoria Montebianco scrolled across the center. Although everyone called me Bert, my given name was Alberta, so that part made sense. I was hesitant to open something that did not belong to me, but Alberta was my name, after all, and the address was my address, and so without further debate, I ripped the envelope open. A sheaf of thick A4-sized pages fell into my hand. The top page was covered in calligraphy, and in the bottom right corner, gleaming like a first-place medal, shone a golden seal of a castle floating above two mountains. The paper alone was something to behold. Heavy bond linen stock, creamy and thick, with an ink signature pressed into the fiber by the nib of a fountain pen. The text was dense and entirely foreign. Turning the pages, I tried to find something I could understand, but aside from the name Montebianco, which appeared about every other line, it was entirely incomprehensible. Holding up the envelope, I said the name out loud. Alberta Isabel Eleanor Victoria Montebianco, fumbling over the syllables as if I were a child learning to read. My first thought was to call Luca. He always knew what to do. Logical, reliable, sane. These were the qualities I loved about him, and the qualities that bound us still, even after all the rough times we'd been through. I'd known Luca most of my life. We had attended the same schools, we had practically grown up together, and he knew me better than anyone. He had grieved with me after the last miscarriage, and he was the one who suggested we go to therapy, volunteering to join me even when it was clear that I needed it more than he did. Luca had always believed that with a little work and preparation, we could survive anything. But one thing was certain, neither of us could have prepared for a letter like the one from the estate of the Montebianco family. I remember sitting there in my kitchen, turning the envelope over in my hands. A strange feeling came over me then, clear as a voice in my ear. It was a warning, a premonition of danger. I wonder now, after all I've learned about the Montebianco family, and all that has happened since that snowy December day, what my life would be like had I tossed the envelope into the recycling bin with the junk mail and old newspapers. But I did not throw out the letter, and I did not pay attention to the creeping sense of danger slithering up my spine. I simply slipped the papers back into the envelope, grabbed my jacket, and went out into the cold, bright morning to find Luca. So, as you can imagine, things heat up from there. Bert Monty discovers that her family is, the rest of her family is in Italy, and she's given a chance to learn about them. So she goes, she and Luca fly to Italy, and this, I'm just going to read a very short couple of pages about what they're doing in Italy on the night before they actually meet the family. Torino was not a primary destination for most tourists. It didn't have the grand monuments of Rome, or the cafes of Paris, or the charming bars of Barcelona. But that night, as Luca and I walked hand in hand through the dark streets near the hotel, I had the impression that Turin, with its palazzos and small shops, was the most romantic city in the universe. We wandered through the city without paying attention to street names, skirting the river Po before turning back in the direction of the hotel. We waded through a crowd standing before a theater and walked alongside a park where wreaths of Christmas lights hung from lampposts, casting red and green and white halos over the sidewalk. It was an hour or so before hunger drove us to look up one of the restaurants Enzo had programmed into the phone. We typed the address into Google Maps, and 5 minutes later we walked into a rustic, dimly lit osteria on the Via Giuseppe Verdi. From the outside, the place appeared quiet, but when we went inside, the restaurant was nearly full. Wine racks lined the walls, bottles rising between framed photos of alpine landscapes, deer and bear and snow-laden mountain huts. As we followed the host to a table in the back corner of the room, I saw plates of pasta, pots of fondue, and baskets of black bread on the tables. Hunger twisted through me. I hadn't eaten for hours. I sank into my chair in full anticipation of dinner. When the waiter arrived, we ordered the nightly special from a handwritten card. As each dish appeared, the waiter explained the courses: antipasto, primo, secondo, and dolce. The fondue that I had spotted earlier was called a bagna coda, a bubbling bath of olive oil, anchovy paste, and garlic eaten with raw vegetables. Then came a creamy, fresh pasta called tajarin, served with a glass of white wine, a smooth, nutty naschetta. This was followed by steak and Barolo, then a dessert of hazelnut cake and a shot of espresso. Whether it was because I had never tasted such food, or because it was my first and last meal with Luca in Italy, I have never, not before or since, tasted anything quite like that dinner. I think of it as akin to the last meal of the condemned, one eaten in the final moments of a life, to give comfort and strength before an unknown journey. Because a treacherous journey awaited me, and while I had no idea of the difficulties I would face, and the ways in which my life would be forever changed, I did embark well fed. The pasta paired so perfectly with the white wine that I wanted to order a second plate. The grilled steak dissolved into the rich, earthy flavor of the Barolo. The sweet hazelnut cake hovered over the meal, a delicate top note. I looked at my husband, happier than I had seen him in years, and I felt a rush of gratitude that we were together. No matter what happened, bad news, tragedy, good fortune, I could get through it as long as we could talk about it over dinner. Thank you for listening, and if you'd like to know more about my book, The Ancestor, or about me, you can find me online, of course. I have a website, www.danielletrussoni.com, and you can get in touch with me there. Thanks so much, and see you later.
Hello everyone, my name is Ruth Danon and I'm very pleased to be here, and I'm going to be reading to you some new work and some old work and some in-between work. Some of it will be from my most recent book and some of it will be brand new work. I'm going to begin with a poem called I Am Not in Tulsa, and this poem I think perhaps speaks to the confinement of the moment, and also, like many poems, is about writing. I am not in Tulsa. She likes her job in the lab, and on bad days when clothes pile up on chairs, she thinks of the white coat starched on a hanger. She likes her job in the lab, and on bad days when clothes pile up on chairs, she thinks of the white coat starched on its hanger. A black cat stalks the lab. On bad days, she likes her job in the lab and thinks of the clothes piled up on chairs. The black cat crosses the room to sit under the starched coat. Bad days pile up like clothes in the corner. She likes her job in the lab. She thinks of the white coat starched hanging in the corner. She likes the cat in the lab. The cat walks the floor, coming on like bad days. The cat piles itself into the chair. She likes her job in the lab. And on bad days, she piles clothes up on chairs and waits for the cat to leap into the pile, the black cat against the white coat. She likes her job in the lab and puts on the white coat, thinking of the black cat and the clothes piled up on chairs. On bad days, she likes her job in the lab and thinks of the white coat and the black cat. Bad days pile up like clothes on the chairs. The cat walks back and forth, black against white. She likes her job in the lab. She thinks of her clothes piled up on chairs. She likes the black cat. The black cat piles himself into clothes. She likes her job in the lab and thinks of a black cat huddled in a pile of white coats. She likes the lab, and on bad days when the job piles up, She stays late walking the floor with the black cat. She likes the black cat, and when the job piles up like clothes on the chairs, she thinks of throwing the white coats on the pile. She likes her job in the lab, and on bad days, which pile up like white coats in the lab, she thinks of the black cat and how happy she is in the lab. She likes the lab, and when the job piles up, she thinks of the cat. When the cat walks back and forth, she thinks of the white coat. She likes her job. In the lab, white coats pile up on bad days. The cat paces. She likes her job in the lab, and she thinks about bad days. Bad days pile up like jobs in the lab. She thinks of the white coats in a pile and remembers the black cat in a white coat. The second poem comes from my book, Limitless Tiny Boat, and it also involves clothing. So now, so much. Once I had a black knit dress. It had a scoop neck and a dropped waist. It fell just below my knees and flowed around my legs on hot summer days. In my black knit dress, I walked for hours through city streets. I was young and in love, and those facts seemed remarkable then, even more remarkable now. When I walked, I didn't think about love or about age. I lived in my body, lived in my heat. Sweat dripped from my proud neck. Didn't know the future was already over. I just kept walking. So after Limitless Tiny Boat, I wrote a book called Word Has It, which came out in 2018. And in that book, I was tracing the period before, during, and after the last election. And what I tried to do was not so much write about the election, but to write about what it felt like to live through it, through that whole period. And one of the issues that the protagonist is dealing with was how to read the signals, how to read what's going on around, how to understand it. And unfortunately, the protagonist isn't very good at it. She's not a very good reader of signals. And in the third part of the book, she turns to birds and hopes that if she takes on birds and the Roman art of divination, she might be able to read the signals. But she isn't good at that either. This poem is called Birding. So listen, let me confess. I do not live in a world that lends itself easily to description or evocation or adoration. In my ordinary life, I face one brick wall on one side and another brick wall on the other. I do not even have words to distinguish one brick wall from another, and if there are windows in yet another wall, they give over to a wall on the far side of any small opening. I envy those who stand quietly on shores and watch plovers. I do not know what a plover looks like, and I do not know if it makes a sound. The word contains the word lover and also the word over, and that is yet another brick wall. I believe in the power of birds, but I do not know, not for a minute, how to describe their quivering hearts or their flights or the mad plunge of herons into salty marshes. A little while ago, I washed my face in clear water. I plunged right in, my stupid eyes closed. I used to live in the city, and now I live in Beacon. And sometimes even in Beacon, we have tornadoes. This poem is called Tornado. Sun, then siren, then storm, then everything still. The sound off, the screen split between the powerful and the powerless. And I am alone in a darkened room where lights flicker and trip the breakers. Flipped the switch and held my breath for 30 seconds, and the lights came on, and I went on with my day without much interference in my life, except for the terrible sadness I feel, and state directly because no evasion is possible. The dead count more than counting, the count intolerable, and ongoing, and going on. So now for 6 months we've been dealing with COVID. And a few months ago I decided that I would try to write about COVID without actually writing about COVID. So these are a few poems, recent poems. This one is called Equipoise. anchored, you could say, or even pinned in place by sunlight, head bowed. You know feelings before words. Pain, desire, loss. No, just grief. You belong in a simpler time. You want simpler feelings. Your hair has grown too long for its own good. Look what it does in the light. Time and place. This placement in the territory of heat, a long way from the starting point, it helps to think about time, geologic time, flattened layers that deflect from the matter altogether. It's nice to hold a lumpy stone in my hand. If I wanted, I could smash a window. I am thinking only of the present, in which time seems inert. I hear sirens announcing bad weather, and for a minute the power is gone. The clock begins to flash red and red again, repeating itself, such that one moment might stay in place for as long as we let it. And if COVID weren't enough, and if politics weren't enough, we also have fires, not just in California, but all over the world. In the time before the actual time. They said shouts became whispers, and no one knew what they were whispering about. Some faces turned towards light. Some faces stayed hidden, confounding authorities who claimed the power to know, whose algorithms took over, whose algorithms claimed the power to read dreams. But when the whispers became dreams, they were not metaphors for hope, but were actual and vivid nocturnal adventures in which small animals outran humans. When shouts became whispers, the fires on the shore burned bright for many days and for many red nights. The way words fail. All day my feet were cold, and I had no language with which to convey my worry and no way to warm my feet. I was tired of being kind because kind was not the point. When birds start to sing, I say, I'm sorry, I'm sorrow, so sorrow. I always like to end my readings with something that is directed in some way to the audience. And so the last poem I'm going to read is actually a series of letters. And it's called Letter in Spirit. And it's letters written to someone. Dear someone, have you considered the possibility that we will, at some unknown point in the future, run out of butter? I am not using butter metonymically, but I do derive a small amount of satisfaction from using that word. But I really mean butter, and I really am worried. R. Dear someone, I have learned that animals, dogs in particular, do not like noise. Now that so many complain about incessant fireworks, they voice concern about the dogs. Yesterday we heard cracks of noise through the trees on the other side of the road. Guns, it seems, not fireworks. The cats hid. They too dislike noise. Today they hide from the vacuum. Dear someone, do you see why I still worry about the butter the cats love to eat from my hand? R. Dear someone, sometimes, I just like to take a little nap in the afternoon. Don't you see how tired I am? So much churning at night, so little butter in the morning. R. Dear someone, you told me today that guns were flying off the shelves, and I wondered where they were flying to. You told me today that you were afraid about the future, and you talked about fear for a long time. Those flying guns make a lot of noise. At the first crack, the animals hide. Then they run to the window, sniff the air. I confess, I am thinking about the noise and fear and flying, and I am thinking about the butter. Or, dear someone, don't you think you've caused enough trouble by speaking out of turn? You know how the blue garden chairs fell over in the rain? Plastic, they had no weight to push back against the wind. It's like that when you stop me from finishing the one simple thing I wanted to say. We're out of butter. Thank you. That last poem is based on an economic theory that says that governments have a choice between guns or butter. For far too long we have chosen guns, and I hope that in the future, soon we will choose butter. Please vote. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Hannah Brooks. I'm one of the long-standing board members of Safe Harbors and the Ritz Theater. I'd like to welcome you to this year's gala. I think many of you are familiar with our mission, but for those of you who are not, we've been around now and celebrating our 20th anniversary. We are a large-scale nonprofit, and we provide redevelopment project in the city of Newburgh that includes transforming lives and building community through housing and the arts. One of our projects is the Cornerstone Residence for supportive housing, and one that I'm very proud of is the arts and culture programming, which is the Ritz Theater, Ann Street Gallery, and Safe Harbors Green. Some of the programming you may be familiar with include many music shows, theater performances, dance performances, outdoor programming, great programming at the Ann Street Gallery with art and art speakers. But one that I'm particularly fond of and instituted with the help of the great staff at Safe Harbors has been the Newburgh Literary Festival. Our goal can't be reached without your help. Now more than ever, please give as generously as you can. We know it's difficult times, and we'd like to keep everything going for our community. Thank you.